Did you know that a seemingly perfect Airbnb in New York City could hold dark, bone-chilling secrets? That's what I discovered during my trip to the Big Apple, a trip I had dreamed about for years but ended up being unforgettable for all the wrong reasons. Growing up in England, visiting New York City was always at the top of my travel bucket list. I would watch movies set in the city and imagine myself walking through Times Square, ice skating at Rockefeller Center, or hailing one of those iconic yellow cabs. The energy, the diversity, the magic, it all seemed too good to be true. After years of saving and planning, the opportunity finally presented itself. My dream was about to come true. I booked a flight for October, my favorite month, imagining the vibrant fall leaves in Central Park and the cozy atmosphere of New York in autumn. I carefully selected an Airbnb in Harlem that fit both my budget and my desire for an authentic NYC experience. The brownstone looked gorgeous in the photos, with its ivy-covered brick walls and vintage charm. The host, Margaret, had excellent reviews. Guests described her as warm, accommodating, and easy to reach. When I arrived in New York, I was overwhelmed by the city's energy. The chaos of JFK Airport, the honking taxis, and the towering skyscrapers were just as I'd imagined. I took a cab to Harlem, and as we pulled up to the brownstone on 123rd Street, I was immediately struck by how picturesque it was. The red brick facade glowed in the golden hour sunlight, and the street itself was quiet, lined with trees whose leaves were just beginning to change color. Using the key from the lockbox, I let myself in. The apartment's interior was just as described: cozy, vintage furniture, a quaint little kitchen, and a bedroom that overlooked the street. But as I walked around, a strange heaviness settled over me. It was subtle at first, just a slight unease I couldn't quite put my finger on. I shook it off as travel fatigue and told myself I was just overthinking. That first night, I was exhausted but excited, running through plans for the week in my head. I went to bed early, hoping to wake up refreshed and ready to explore the city. But I didn't get much sleep. Around midnight, I was jolted awake by the sound of faint creaks and footsteps in the hallway. My heart skipped a beat. At first, I thought it might be the neighbors upstairs. But the footsteps sounded too close, as if someone was pacing right outside my bedroom door. I held my breath, straining to listen. After a few minutes, the noise stopped, and I told myself it was probably the old floorboard settling. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was there. The second night was worse. I woke up around 2 a.m. to the sound of whispering, soft, hushed voices coming from outside my bedroom door. It was so faint that I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was unmistakably eerie. My chest tightened as I listened, trying to convince myself it was my imagination. Gathering my courage, I turned on the light and opened the door. The hallway was empty, and the apartment door was still locked. But as I turned back toward the bedroom, something in the corner of my eye made me stop. A dark shadow stood in the far corner of my room. It wasn't a trick of the light or a shadow from furniture. It was tall, humanoid, and radiated a presence so menacing that I felt paralyzed. I couldn't move, couldn't even scream. After what felt like an eternity, I reached for the lamp on the bedside table. The light flicked on, and the shadow vanished instantly, as if it had never been there. The next morning, I convinced myself that I was letting jet lag and anxiety get the better of me. I spent the day walking through Central Park, taking photos of the fall foliage, and even treated myself to a Broadway show. For a while, I felt normal again. But when I returned to the Airbnb that evening, the apartment felt different, darker, heavier, as though it was waiting for me. Later that night, I noticed a small door near the kitchen that I hadn't paid attention to before. It was padlocked and slightly warped, as if it had endured decades of wear and tear. Something about it unsettled me. I tried to brush it off, thinking it must lead to a storage area or an old basement. But the gnawing feeling in my stomach told me it was something more. At 3 a.m. I woke to the sound of scratching, faint but deliberate, coming from behind the locked door. I froze in bed, my heart pounding. Then came the knock, soft, deliberate, and chillingly close. And then I heard it, the faint, unmistakable sound of a child's laughter. It wasn't playful or innocent, it was slow, distorted, and deeply unsettling. My blood ran cold as I stared at the door, paralyzed with fear. The next morning, I couldn't take it anymore. I packed my bags and left for a hotel downtown without looking back. But before I left, my curiosity got the better of me. I did a quick search of the building's history. What I found made my stomach drop. In the 1920s, the brownstone had been a boarding house run by a woman named Margaret, the same name as my host. She was notorious for locking tenants in the basement as punishment for unpaid rent. Several tenants were reported missing, but the cases were never solved. Back in England, I tried to move on, but the nightmares began almost immediately. In my dreams, I was back in that brownstone, standing in front of the locked door. The scratching and laughter grew louder and more desperate. Sometimes I would open the door in the dream, but I'd always wake up drenched in sweat before seeing what was inside. One evening, as I unpacked souvenirs, I came across a photo I'd taken of the brownstone. At first, it looked normal, but then I noticed something in one of the upper windows, a faint, shadowy figure staring out. It was the same tall, dark shape I'd seen in the corner of my bedroom. Even now, I can't explain what happened in that Airbnb. I avoid talking about it, but every so often, in the quiet of the night, I hear faint footsteps in my hallway. And sometimes, if I listen closely, I swear I hear the sound of a child's laughter. Did you know that some nightmares don't stay behind, they follow you home?